Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
On behalf of Whitetail Rendezvous, this is your host, Bruce Hutchin, and I want to say thank you to everybody for making 2016 a banner year. Why? Because we went over 100,000 iTunes downloads. Why? Because we had over 300 guests on the show. And talking about the show, sometimes my guests are in a tree stand, sitting in a pickup truck on the top of a hill, or just don't have great bandwidth to pick up the recording. So I apologize for that. We're doing the best we can, but this is a real show with real people in real places.
This is Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, episode number 319.
Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, and we're going to be visiting with Jason Reid. Jason is the marketing manager for the Crosman Corporation. Jason loves to hunt whitetails, and he's going to tell a great story about elk hunting out in Wyoming, DIY. And he talks about hunters, who we are in the world that we live in today. So take care, listen, and enjoy the show. Hey, listeners, don't forget to text 33444 Food Plot for your free Food Plot ebook. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. Hey, folks, it's December 30th, so hey, Happy New Year to everybody. May it be a prosperous 2017. With us today, we have Jason Reid. Jason's from upstate New York, and he works as a marketing communication for Crosman. And Crosman is a household name, been around for hundreds of years. I don't know if it's hundreds, but long, long time. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to talking with you today.
And what do you do for Crosman? What is a marketing communication?
I'm the marketing communications manager, so I would do a lot of outreach, do a lot of in-person interviews, do a lot of messaging strategy for the company, and also working with states to on airboat and air gun legalization and information. The other thing that I work on too is original content with them. Now, I just started this about a month ago, right in the middle of deer season, so I'm still getting my feet under me.
Oh my goodness!
So far,
this is brand new.
This is brand new, and I'm really excited to have this opportunity to work in the industry full time. I've been a freelance writer for the last several years and serving the industry in that regard. But now I'm a little more formal, and it's been a really exciting fall thus far.
Wow, I guess so. So, a lot of people ask me, they'll send me emails or touch base with me on Twitter or Facebook, sometimes Instagram. How do I get into the outdoor industry? I just had a guy that's done a ton of things. He's 60 years old because he decided to do it. But how did you begin your career? Because a lot of people want to know about that. And yes, folks, we are going to talk about hunting and DIY hunting, but just give me a few minutes about your career path.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a great question because I get that question all the time too. And at the end of the day, everyone's got to remember that it's still an industry, it's still business. You still need to have an understanding of the general business acumen to get in and get started. For me, my journey started. I came from a business family, so I think that way. But I saw the opportunity about 5 years ago when I was a sophomore at Houghton College, and I saw the opportunity to get my foot in the door through blogging. And I realized I could use blogging and writing, even though it wasn't it's not the most popular thing in the world. You know, a lot of kids my age are more leaning towards video and photos. I saw for me the ability to start blogging and just use it as a platform to ask questions and network with the right people, and that led to, you know, just some paid jobs. You know, at this point, I've been fortunate enough to pay for my elk hunts with my writing money. But it's also, you know, helped me network and meet the right people. And eventually, you know, just, you know, this past, you know, month and a half, it paid off in a big way, having those connections when there was an opening at Crosman. So a lot of sweat equity has gone into it. I mean, I've spent the last 5 years, almost every waking moment that I can spare, to writing something, researching topics and articles, and trying to make those inroads with you know, as many different people as I can. And it just starts building, and really people start getting frustrated because they don't see immediate results right away, right? I'm going to be honest with you, Bruce, it's taken me 5 years to get to this point where, you know, I've shown the ability to stick around for a little while. And when people are looking, especially in a position, you know, media is the fun thing, and everyone that wants to get in, a lot of people want to get in on the media side because that's what we see all the time. You got to remember that you're dealing with people's ad money and their ad budgets, so they want to know if they're going to throw ad money at you, you're going to have a solid platform to be able to you know, you have structure, so they know that their marketing dollars are going to be put to good use, and they're going to a solid resource. But again, there's a lot of other ways to do it too. I mean, you got to think about, you know, the different types of sales jobs that are out there. So there's a lot of different ways to get in, but getting your foot in the door. For me, you know, I started when I was really young at all this, starting in college, so I had a lot of extra time to put, you know, to dedicate to just breaking through the initial layers of, hey, who are you? So that's just kind of a quick little background of my journey there, and I hope it makes sense and can help someone.
Yeah, it does. And what I took away from that, one, you worked at your craft. You started drawing attention to yourself by sharing with others, one on social media, then you had your blog. Then because you had a business family, okay, I'm a product, you know, Jason, you are a product, just like Whitetail Rendezvous is a product. I retired from corporate America. I'm 7 years old, and my buddy and I said, you know, let's do this thing. And so I've got a lot of things behind me to help me through it, but it still gets frustrating. It still gets hard because how do I get more listeners? How do I attract those sponsors? How do I do this? And it's no different than if you and I were selling widgets together. It really isn't.
Right.
We just chose to be our industry. Go ahead.
No, you're totally right. I mean, you're constantly refining the craft, and it is a product. And you know, it's not talked about the media products. We'll talk about media products because there's a lot of people out there doing stuff like you and me. How do you differentiate yourself? But you do need to treat it like a business if you're going to garner attention. And eventually make the inroads to it, but you got to stick with it. You know, I can't tell you how many times, Bruce, that I was in college. I was in the middle of my college career. I can't tell you how many times that I chose to not go party, but sit in my room on a Friday and Saturday night and just keep writing. I thought I was crazy. My friends thought that I was crazy, but it pays off in the end. And people and businesses, they want to see that you do have a stick-to-it attitude, because at the end of the day, even though it is hunting, it is a business out there. But the other thing is too, the industry is looking for the next generation, and so if you could start young, you know, for guys that are in my position, you know, use that youth to your advantage. So that's kind of been my message to people that ask, you know, to not give up on the dream. I mean, Bruce, for the last 2.5 years, I've sold fruit powders for my day job and been a writer at night. You know, I was serving the industrial food ingredient industry for the last 2.5 years, and just doing all my outdoor industry stuff in my spare time, and it finally paid off.
And, that's, I can't say it any whether it's not easy, folks. I guess that's what I would add. It's just flat not easy. And, you go, why am I doing this? But what I'd like to share with our listeners, no matter what you choose to do, you say the rut's coming, I'm going to go sit in that stand from dawn to dusk or to dark. That's 8 hours, 10 hours, whatever. You make a conscious decision, you prep yourself for it, and then you just do it. Nike's that, you just do it.
Yep.
Forget about all the other crap that enters into it. You just say, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I choose to do. And you choose to do it, not because of somebody else telling you what to do, but you choose to do it. And if you get in a situation that I said, this is wrong, then that's your internal mechanism. Say, okay, don't just blow it up and go say, I'm out of here. Just figure it out. And then get yourself out of there as soon as possible, because you might have bills to pay or whatever. Let's switch it up now. Upstate New York, you're up by, I'm trying to think, the Adirondacks, or where do you live up there?
New York's a pretty big state. The Adirondacks are awesome. I go there every year. I do a lot of fishing up there. I'm actually more towards Western New York, central Western area, near the floodplains of Lake Ontario. So it's it's funny. New York is just, people hammer on New York, and probably for a good reason. New York, if you look at any of where New York ranks in deer hunting, it's usually the worst state. I think that honestly, it really depends. There are some pockets in New York that are just, comparable to the Midwest. My biggest buck scored 165, green gross a couple of years ago. So there are some real fertile soil, but unfortunately, there's, unlike the Midwest, there's not a collective culture of management desires in the state. So, and you couple that with, you get further south in the state, or you get up to the Adirondack region, there's not as much fertile ground, and that does reflect in the deer. But it's not the worst deer hunting in the world. I had a pretty bad year this year, just with, we've had some really rough winters up here. But for the Northeast, this is, it's not half bad.
And, thanks for that. I can remember, I never did hunt up in the Adirondacks, but I listened to stories. I lived in Long Island, so I lived down south. But there were a couple of guys that had a cabin. In fact, I went to they call it the Oxbow, because the river up there in the Adirondacks, it was right up there. And I skied. What's the mountain up there?
Like Marcy or Whiteface?
Whiteface Mountain. I skied there.
Whiteface.
I skied there and knew about it, but I never got up there and got invited to their cabin. So I did all my hunting in New England, where I had come from as a young man, and that's where I started hunting. And then I moved to Wisconsin, and it was all over once I got to Wisconsin. There's there's thousand whitetail hunters and goose hunters and duck hunters. And it was Katie bought her door when I went to La Crosse, Wisconsin to school. I spent more time in the marsh and in the hills than in class. If my grandkids are listening to this, don't take after me, but maybe do take after me.
Don't say. That's funny you mentioned that, Bruce, because where I went to school, the school let us bow hunt the property that they owned.
Yeah. So
it was always this battle between getting our schoolwork done and getting in the woods. And we hunted a lot when me and my buddies hunted a ton when we were in college. So good times.
Well, it is. And, while we're thinking about it, I'm just trying to think how we're going to go. Let's talk about DIY hunting, public ground, non-guided, and you do that both for whitetails and for elk. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, start with whitetails. I've hunted quite a bit of public ground between my college years and now that I'm, I moved into this new role with Crosman. I've got to find some new places to hunt, and there is some public ground near there that I'm going to scout out. But in the east, it's getting harder and harder to get permission. It's just the nature of the beast. So I try my best to, I have a family cabin that I hunt, but that's 2 hours away from my house. So, it's a weekend journey for the most part. But really the big one for me is going out west every year for elk, and that's a public land hunt. We bike ride into the mountains for about 16 miles, and we really earn the shot opportunities there, putting a lot of miles on our boots for that. So I mean, it's that for me. I could sit here and talk about elk hunting all day long, just because that for me is one of the ultimate adventures, especially coming from the east to go west and experience the mountains like that. It's extremely special, and I work really hard all year to be able to save my time and my money to do that hunt. And it's something where as an Eastern hunter, I've become very in tune with the public land conversation out there, very concerned myself, even though out east here, you probably don't get that same stuff. Not a lot of guys even know what's going on. Personally, I think that's an article that I've been looking at writing for some time, is how people in the East can A, become informed, and B, can support our Western brothers and sisters. In the challenges that public lands face. But it's, there's no better meat to me than elk meat. So, for as long as I can still walk, I'm gonna try to not miss a September.
Let's talk about how you hunt elk, and parallel it to whitetail hunting, because the first time, long time ago, living in Wisconsin, came out, west to hunt, and we were good whitetail hunters with the bows. It's a bow hunt. And I read a couple of books, one by Dwight Shue, one of his first books, and I read that and said, okay. And just by taking his book, DIY, National Forest, and I was into elk really quick. And it was funny thing, I heard this cow chirping. I knew it was a cow chirping after I saw the cow chirping, but it sounded just like a bird. I'm going, what the heck is that? Well, the cow was chirping at her calf to get her, because she wasn't any more than 50 yards away from me, down in the little canyon, gully, whatever, ravine, and she was chirping because she wanted the calf to come down to her, because she knew I was there, but she wasn't going to leave. And then from there on, it was game on, because I just applied what I had learned just by reading that book. Never been on this land before, but I figured it out, and I had an opportunity. I missed him to get a bull, and I got really close to him, actually too close, and he busted and went down the slope, and that was that. But I smelled him before I saw him. And I'm going, what's that barnyard? It smelled just like a barnyard. I went, oh, that's an elk. And then, I come to draw, and then, it's all over. But I did it. And so I came off that hunt realizing, one, because I was a whitetail hunter, I was probably going to be a good elk hunter. And so from your point of view, what are the things whitetail hunting has taught you about being an elk hunter?
I think there's a lot. You read all the time, you talk to people, you got to throw everything out you ever learned about whitetail hunting to go hunt elk. Well, yes and no. Obviously, there's different tactics, but first off, if you can hunt a whitetail, you're going to build those instincts, those hunting instincts of pinch points, food, cover, bedding. The fundamentals of hunting don't really change. Where people get scared, and I don't even know if scared, but where the learning curve is how to move in on elk, where to look for elk. For me, my father's been a pretty avid elk hunter for the last 15 years. So he's got a lot of experience, and he had a really good teacher of someone who lives in the West who taught him, and they've taught me how to do it. So really, from my perspective, if you can figure out on a map before you leave where the north-facing slopes are, and you can plug those in your GPS, that's one thing, because then you can just go and hunt those specific pockets, because that's the one big thing. Deer, one of the big differences with deer, they're pretty much spread out pretty evenly, right? For elk, they're going to be in little pockets. I mean, especially in September when it's warm, predominantly going to be hunting individual north-facing timber pockets, and that's going to hold elk, but you got to be able to break down the whole landscape, and that's a big landscape, and it'd be overwhelming for sure. So that's one, just to break down the world to the individual north-facing pockets. I think number two, it's the whole question of, how do I call for elk versus moving in on them, how to move in on them. You get paralyzed. I remember, some of my first plays on elk, I was just paralyzed with fear about moving in because I'm trained as a whitetail hunter to literally not move until I have to. Elk are a little different in the sense that, I'll give you an example. My buddy and I had dropped off of the ridge into this creek bottom to go after this bull one morning. It was bugling. And as we're sneaking our way along, a cow popped up in front of us. And she wasn't more than 45 yards in front of us. But as soon as she lost sight of us just because of the contour of the land, we jumped into the creek bottom. And we made all sorts of racket. But the cow didn't spook because we just sounded like other elk. And that's the one nice thing that I love about elk hunting versus whitetails is I can actually be a little noisy when I'm walking. I don't, within reason, but if you bust a stick, it's not the end of the world. They just think it's other elk most of the time. So that learning curve of spot and stalk and knowing when to be an aggressive, the ebb and flow of being aggressive on moving in on elk, that does take some learning. But you just got to get in enough situations where you can know when to push and when to pull on that. So,
what about vocalization? You mentioned bugling elk. How much you rattle, snort, wheeze, doe bleed when you're hunting whitetails?
Really it's two different. At that point, it's really two different animals. I actually draw more of like a lot of people probably do, and you'll read about this a lot. Elk hunting is more like turkey hunting in that regard, and calling turkeys. But what you really got to be careful of though is look, like where I hunt elk, they're so skittish because the wolf population is so high that. We were calling an elk this year that just blew out of the country the second we hit the cow calls. So you really have to pay attention to those first couple of plays that you get, how elk are going to respond to the calls. For this particular area that I hunt, I rely less on calls and more on just trying to get in, spot and stalk and just getting in close. Because we have had too many situations where big bulls were just blowing out. Now, I say that the first bull I ever shot, my only bull from 2015, was that was a satellite bull that we were able to trail the herd in such a way that we made one cow call and he came back to look for us. But with my some of my dad's bulls that I've been on with him. He shot a bull a couple of years ago that went top 5 for the state we were in, and we didn't make a sound. It was that big of an animal that we didn't make a sound, and we just got right into his wheelhouse and got him. So it's all ebb and flow, and you just got to use your hunter's instincts. Like for example, my brother, when he went with my dad, it was 95 degrees out the whole time, and he just figured out where they were. He was 17 at the time, mind you. He figured out where they were moving and went off on his own and killed a 300-inch bull.
No way.
So it's just using the yeah, it's a great story. And my brother's a real independent kid, and so it's funny because the 2 nights in a row they'd seen these elk like right outside of camp almost in a meadow like a mile away, and so the one afternoon my dad and our buddy Bryce wanted to go into the canyons, and my brother's like, no way. There's elk over there every night. So he did. He went and got set up and crushed one. So it's just using the hunter's instincts and for elk. And that's just the one thing. If you can hunt a big whitetail, you're going to have those hunter's instincts. So it's just adapting to the situation.
And they do adapt. And see, I tell people all the time, I don't care if you're hunting 40 acres on your woodlot, behind your house, behind the barn, in a swamp in Wisconsin or the Midwest. You always have to break it down. Okay, where's that animal feeding? Where's he sleeping? What's his transition areas? And where's his escape cover? Because he needs food, cover, and water, right? That's what he needs. So if you're going to go elk hunting with Google Earth, it gets really easy. You don't have to use topo maps anymore. You should, but you can use Google Earth. And like you said, north-facing slopes and water and stuff. And elk can't feed in dark timber. There's no grass. there's forage and some forbs and stuff like that, but they have to find an open park, which may be in the dark timber, but they have to come out to that open park. Why? Because they eat grass for the most part, and they'll eat crops and all that other stuff. But thinking about that, and then you just take it, okay, what do whitetails need? What do elk need? Same thing. Similar types of animals.
Yeah.
Elk are heard and they vocalize to be seen. Whitetails, you have herds and does and fawns and bucks and you have bachelor groups and all that type of thing that happens. And so you take one, and the trick is really to look at your Google Earth and say, okay, here's the 10 square miles I'm going to hunt, and because this is where I'm going to camp, this is where I'm going to get my water, this is, here's the 10 square miles, and if I get lost, I follow this river out, creek bottom, then I just have to walk and I'll get out. And you think about all that, and all of a sudden it becomes comfortable. And I think that's what happened to us, because we kind of knew where we're going. We knew the creeks. And I always run creeks, especially in areas I've never been. I'll stay in one drainage until I know that drainage and, back and forth. Then I'll drop into another one. Then I'll expand it. That might take 3 or 4 years to do that, to make the investment of time. But in Colorado, the elk are there. Go ahead.
I was going to say, that's a really key point about DIY Western hunting. And I get a lot of people that ask me all the time, "Oh, can I go with you? I want to go out this year. I'm going to plan a hunt." And I ask everybody, one simple question when it comes to Western hunting: do you want to go on a Western hunt, or do you want to become a Western hunter? Because what you just said there was really important, Bruce. It takes you 3, 4, 5 years to really learn the place. If you're spending 10 days a year, it doesn't matter how much you spend time on Google Earth, but if you're gonna just have 7 to 10 days to learn a piece of ground, it's gonna take you some time to learn the animal movements and start putting things together. We've been hunting this particular area for probably 5 or 6 years now as a group, and now we've got data. And between me, my brothers, and my dad, we've all shot bulls within a mile of each other, and we now have this. We've been able to, because of that, we've been able to put together, plot points and see how the animals are moving, and then your hunts really start to become more and more successful as time goes on. But it is an investment. It's not, you're not able to do it every year as an Eastern hunter, and I get that. If you can, God bless you. But that's just kind of the challenge of doing it. And for me, hey, I'm a single guy. I'm going to go elk hunt as much as I can until I have other obligations. So, but the other thing too, though, kind of on a reverse side, though, I think one way elk hunting's made me a better whitetail hunter is that I've never paid more attention to maps than I do nowadays. I used to not really pay attention to maps for whitetails, but after spending so much time looking at considering how topography impacts elk movement, now it's just become a part of my repertoire for whitetails. And it's my shot opportunities, I feel like, have increased because I'm focusing more on even the smallest ripple in a landscape for whitetails than I used to. So you take things from both disciplines.
And well said. And we're really scooting through the call, but the interview.
We got time.
Okay, one thing I wanted to share is hunters. Who are we? And we talked about that. I just had Blake Alma on, who's got a book coming out, The Hunter's War, and it's about anti-hunters and other folk, vegans that he talks about, that don't want us to hunt and see us posting our bucks or our elk or dead pictures on Facebook, and they just flat go off because they think it's wrong. So as a hunter, who are we?
We have a very special culture that runs really deep, and for us, it's not uncommon. It's just part of who we are. I do think that there is something to be said that we're definitely seeing it more and more, Bruce, that individuals are taking it upon themselves to post professional photos and communicate professionally. It has nothing to do with that if you're ever sponsored or not. And I think that's one thing that's really helping our image. We've got great examples from companies. I'll just throw out some companies that I love following their content, like in Sitka, Kuiu, Yeti, Matthews. I mean, those companies are putting out really professional style content, and that's inspiring their consumers that do the same. And I think we're seeing a real shift in, how we communicate, just from the regular, just the everyday guy like me and you, how we communicate hunting. I think that's changing for the better. As a culture, there are always going to be people that are mad at you. They're always going to claim. They're always, they're going to push back. They're going to push back because it doesn't agree with their, with what they believe. So, unfortunately, they there's no law for them. They're claiming, don't shoot something in the name of I love my, furry cub act. So for us, we just have to be we do need to be cognizant of how we are presenting ourselves and communicating ourselves. But we are a very inclusive culture. We're a hardworking culture, and we certainly put forth a lot of effort into making sure that we talked a little bit about public lands. We certainly put a lot of money and effort and time into conserving those resources, because no one really loves them more than we do. So I hope that it kind of answers your question about who we are.
It does, and it addresses a couple of things. A good friend of mine, Judd Cooney, taken hundreds of thousands of photos, been in the business, 30, 40 years. And he said, today the photos are the story and the content, the words just finish the story. But people are looking at pictures. And he said, when you take a picture, just don't go snap, snap, snap. Set the picture up and try to tell a story with every single photo you take. So you just don't do it. And he says you do that, then you're going to have good quality and you can communicate effectively just with a photo.
Yeah. And that's just, like I said, it's becoming, we're getting better at it as a whole. It's taken us a long time as a culture to kind of, react to the onslaught of hatred from the anti-hunters. But the other thing is, too, at the same time of all these photos, what's not being talked about is how many people this is impacting. So, for example, I've got an article supposed to be coming out on realtree.com in a few months. But over the summer, I went and I interviewed a couple of adult hunters who had never touched a gun, never even thought about hunting in their life, and how later in life that they found the inspiration to start hunting and start to learn how to hunt. I mean, we're talking about someone who's a VP of banking and works downtown, wears suits every day, and, gets into hunting in their mid-40s. So what's not being talked about, because the anti-hunters they're taking the airwaves, but at the same time, all these photos are inspiring have inspired this grassroots movement of, adult hunters. And I mean, I wish they were talked about more, but it's not. But that's the other, I don't know if I'd call it a consequence, but that's a result of hunting being communicated through through quality communication. So I think in one sense that we're really, I feel like we're making a comeback as hunters, really, really are. And then we're going to continue to see an upswing in female participation. And again, the people that take it up later in life, that's what's not being talked about right now, and it should be.
And one segment, and we're coming up to the soft stop, getting on the show coming up, but women, 17%, 13%, 18%, there's a number floating around in the outdoor media realm that, women are making up close to 20% of the retail's new money. It's new money coming in. Women in the outdoors is huge. And I think of, the pros, Kirsty Pike, CEO of Pros, 8-9 years ago, 10 years ago, her and her husband Steve were coming back from a Bronco game. She said, I'm sick and tired of wearing your jeans and your camo. What are we going to do? And she created an unbelievable company. Yeah. And she reflects that because women, they hang with women. Their bodies are different. They need cut. The cloth has to be cut different. Has to be shaped to women of all sizes, and it's a huge industry, and that has helped propel, in my opinion, the resurgence of people saying, well, if I can do it, they can do it. And, you have, you think about Eva Shockey and her dad and the impact she's had, and, many, many other wonderful ladies. But we are gaining some ground. I guess that's what I wanted to say before I just gave you about a minute or two to give some shout outs to your company and whoever else. And then we got to call it a show.
Yeah, that's fine. Like I said, I'm doing a lot of work with Crosman. Nowadays, we've got a new brand called Centerpoint Archery. We're going to be at the ATA show. Love to see people come on out and see the new. We got 6 new bows coming out this year between vertical and crossbows. So pretty excited there. And if you want to get in touch with me, my personal website is pushingthewildlimits.com. Hit me up on Facebook or Instagram. We'd love to connect with you there. And thanks for having me on today. A lot of fun.
Yeah, you've been awesome. And I'm going to, on behalf of Whitetail Rendezvous Nation across North America, actually global, because we have a lot of veterans or people in country that listen to the show. And so thank you, Jason, for, being a great guest and bringing some, different thoughts into the mix about DIY hunting in the West. So thank you, sir, and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, too.
Stay tuned for the next episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. We're going to be heading over to Iowa, and we're going to be connecting with Brandon Doms. Now, Brandon's part of the Trophy Bucks of Iowa. And if you haven't found him on Facebook, man, you really need to follow these guys. Just go to Facebook and take a look, because they got thousands of followers, and they post to everybody's buck, doe, doesn't matter. And take a look.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.